and whatever I see is smiling at me. Love is who I am.
Hello there everyone, and welcome to this video with me today, where I wish to talk about the essence of the flame of illumination and the liberation of ourself in that truth and wholeness of illumined state of being. So for those of you who know me, you know I love to talk about the illumined union, and it's a state that I embody myself. It's a state where I come from. It's just the devotion to everything for me. It's all in alignment. And in today's topic, I want to explain how we move through these stages of that integration in the purpose of illumined union in our own state of illumination, so we can become this liberated sacred flame of our true liberated presence. And as you know, I do these posts and writings, and those of you who don't follow me on Instagram or read my blog, I advise you to, if you want to subscribe to my Diary of an Ascension Pioneer. It's a blog with all my Ascension updates and spirit messages. So I wish to read what I recently wrote because it's all in alignment with this current state, and then we're going to delve deeper into that. Okay, so the first thing I wrote is this. What does it mean to dream beautiful dreams that are aligned with truth and wholeness of divine love? It is to see every aspect of creation as uniquely whole and important in divine equality. I can't read this. Why? What is this? What does it mean to dream beautiful dreams that are aligned with truth and wholeness of divine love? It is to see every aspect of creation as uniquely whole and important in divine equality. That equality does not imply sameness, quite on the contrary. It implies the understanding of variation of creation, where we are all the embodiment of a unique being, perfectly held within our own creative realm. However, in the bigger picture of a divine plan, all of our individual realms interconnect and intertwine. Together, they create a beautiful mandala created through the love of wholeness and divine harmony, which is the symmetry of divine perfection. Only when we are completely aligned and harmonious from within can we actually tap into this vaster tapestry of divine beauty and love. When our focus or goal is only to experience personal happiness without the consideration of others and our environment, we're still only able to feel partial or fragmented wholeness as an idea of it. Our being is contained within a bordered dome of light that is not yet limitless and expanding into infinity. It is still confined, and it has limitations and borderlines. When we truly melt as one into the illuminating presence of divine love, all of those boundaries will suddenly dissolve and our co-creative space will become limitless and infinite. But it is only when our love is true that this will occur, for we cannot fool the divine source of I am within us. It knows every inch of us, every separation we have ever created, and every illusion we still give our power to. We're only truly limitless and unified through the power and grace of divine love that lives as the embodiment of truth within us. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing I wrote is, what is the essence of the liberated divine feminine and masculine in divine union? As we embrace more of illumination from within, we realize that the words twin flame in the physical realm of experience and mastery simply represent two beings who have fully become their own sacred flame of illumination. That is what illumined union means, and as the state of cosmic union ascension overflows within the individual self, they can become the holy fire of spirit embodiment. As this occurs, they transcend the individual soul levels of experience in order to become a greater vessel for spirit embodiment, an extension of illumination, experiencing life in the physical realm. That's why in illumined unions, the flame of creation will not burn if both individuals have not built their own sufficient quotient of light in order to become truly liberated in their spirit embodiment. In order to truly initiate this stage, they must both free themselves of all personal desires, expectations, and illusions of linear time. They must also liberate themselves from all sorts of comparison and other people's projections of union, for they must embrace their full unique path of union. In order to set the stage for physical union of complete spirit devotion, they must become free spirits who are only interested in serving a greater purpose of the divine plan within the great design. They must step aside from the known and familiar in order to embrace the path of genuine devotion. They do not know what that is or how it looks like through control, for they have surrendered that in order to birth a new vision of divine knowing. When the illumined and fully liberated divine feminine and masculine are totally ready to dance as one, so they shall eventually become. The reason why I wrote this is because, as you know, we go through these waves of integration. And I myself, in my own embodiment of this illumined union, which is first an inner alchemical union, have always gone through these stages. And again, I want to talk about these stages more in depth because, as you know, even in my own life, as you know, I do Tantrika yoga, which is what I call life force yoga, mastery. And it's basically the path of liberating the life force so it can flow through us in an unlimited reservoir of life in motion, so that we can become the essence of life eventually, without those human expectations, projections, and limitations. So if you will notice yourself, when these waves come, these waves of integration, the first cycle will always be very much the cycle of activation, when you feel really bursting with this very much enthusiastic flame, which is an expansion of your inner flame. But for that expansion of the inner flame to become an embodied practice, to become a living reality at the level of the light quotient that literally is an alchemical union in your body. Whoa, there's a huge spider there. Wow. So it takes a while, right? So when that disintegration becomes more and more of an integration in the wholeness within your physical body process, which is not just a love light movement, it's a movement of every light and shadow you have perhaps failed to see or recognize or witness as your own. And people who are afraid of, let's say, the shadow, they can't step as deeply into this union. So we always talk about in terms of love versus fear, but that's not truly the ultimate polarity. The ultimate polarity is that love and union versus separation. Fear is one aspect of separation that is a result of that separation, but it's not that ultimate polarity, which we always say, choose love versus fear. It's always that embodiment of union versus separation. That's the first polarity expression. And then it becomes many different forms in its state of fragmentation. So when you are stepping on the path of becoming initiate of this cosmic union, I call it the Tantrika Life Force Mastery path of embodied union, you will see that these waves and stages cannot be manipulated. We have to go through them. So usually when this activation wave comes and it feels really good and you're really opening up the new, then it has to move through your whole body. And I've been explaining this throughout many of my videos, basically all of my videos about this topic. And as this occurs, the final stages will usually be the most challenging ones. And this means that in these final stages, we're going to be asked to liberate ourselves of everything that has basically kept us at a certain level of expansion at that time. So people who usually live a very always like similar reality, nothing really changes drastically, even if they live in the realm of love, light, union, it doesn't mean they're necessarily ready to expand to the degree that those beings who are here as illumined beings, who are opening these higher gateways of cosmic presence on earth, of this seed of life born and activated, fully integrated on earth, they won't necessarily feel it as intensely, as deeply, because you always feel it as deeply as you're ready to open the gates. Okay, so the last stages can be more or most challenging, and this is when a huge breakthrough can occur with your overall overseeing presence, when you're just witnessing things as they're like transpiring. A lot of times that first enthusiastic wave may get you to, think, oh, now it's all figured out. And then this wave of integration will come because you're in need to expand from every contraction that has ever held us in human form at a certain level of frequency, at a certain level of evolutionary, cellular evolutionary level of being. It's very hard for me to say these words, okay? So what I wish to talk about here today. I wish to talk about first, I made again a few notes so that I don't forget, what this, and I've been writing before, what this liberated illumined union means, because a lot of people talk about twin flames. I do not. I talk about the twin soul as our inner nature. And for me, what recently Spirit showed me is that the twin flame literally means in the physical, the beings, the twin flame, which is like a counterpolarity flame and existence to yours, because first your inner twin soul is already whole and unified. It's not split in any way in that matter. It's wholeness existing in you as the whole of cosmos. So when that is ready to become an illumined flame within you, you will see nothing will be as resonant or natural for you, that which also can reflect that inner state of illumination that you are actually integrating in your life. You will not just be interested in what people call a relating experience or relationship that's meant to fulfill your personal needs and desires in your life path. It will be meant to bring this higher state of illumination closer to physical embodiment and what you've signed up for as a soul being, really depending on where you are as a unique being and vastness of variation of creation. That also means that, you can't project that love to someone else. You can't think it's coming from somewhere else. You have to be ready to witness those stages of illumination that are occurring when your inner flame of illumination is growing and it's expanding and it's reaching this higher expanded potentiality of life through your body. So in a way, the twin flame, how Spirit shows me, means that the two individuals who have embodied this similar light quotient, magnetics versus electrics union, right? It's not versus, it's unified. So they can come together for this greater expansion. They will create greater birth than each individual because they have already become the flame within themselves. So they've expanded this potential. But when they come together, they're bringing alchemical compositions of that union, which are new, which are, how our bodies are designed in this nature. The feminine, the masculine coming together in order to amplify or multiply that light quotient expansion. But first it has to be reached within in order for union to truly be illumined. So those beings who have a program or a soul plan to be in illumined unions, they go through, let's say, much more training than people who are just choosing a partnership, a certain relationship. I'm not saying, and Spirit isn't saying, or anyone is saying, that when you live for just the fulfillment of your personal happiness, your own truth, your own happiness, that realm is enough, that mastery level you are achieving for yourself, how you create to become a powerful creator being, that is bad or it's not enough. It's actually very beautiful. So it's the first stage. I always tell you, self-love is the setting stone for love that grows into realizing it's universal, it's cosmic love, it's divine love. It's the love when this wholeness of you is the wholeness of all. Because when your actions are not yet aligned with that higher presence, which is not just, okay, that's important for me, that's my driveway to happiness, that's my road to happiness. But a lot of times people, especially through relationships, through that mirror reflection, they won't always see how sometimes what they're choosing for themselves can also have implications of selfishness in it, embedded. And a lot of times it will be distorted. It will come from separation more than union. So this is not love versus fear. This is a unified perspective. This is unity versus that separation. So for us to understand this, we first have to be ready to witness ourselves as whole. And that means the road to wholeness is the road through both light and shadow. This is how we master ourselves in the earthly planes of reality. And I've said this before, it's not just what you perceive yourself to be as a being, the cosmos or whatever kind of realms of light people say they're from. It's not from, it's of. You're of that particular alignment in spirit, of that devotion, of that truth, of that truthfulness in your presence. It's also what you, through your evolution on earth, in this vertical meeting the horizontal aspect, will embody, and gradually and eventually. Okay, so that's the first thing I wanted to really talk about. that idea of personal happiness is something that, as you know, is a very huge presence nowadays, especially in the New Age movement and manifestation movement, in the secret or the law of attraction movement. Everyone wants to attract the best, highest possible realities for themselves. And like I said, it's nothing wrong with that. It's a part of that learning experience. But illumined beings, or a state of illumination, is a state where you have become a greater vessel of spirit in how you serve and how you exist. You simply are that way. You don't have an intention to become that way. It's just naturally embedded within you. It's just how you are wired. That's why sometimes we say, oh, I'm not wired like this. Or, sometimes maybe you will meet different people and they will reflect a different reality to you. So let's say you meet someone who's more service to self and you are all that giving universally. Perhaps sometimes it's not a negative message. Sometimes people think, well, that was a person I don't resonate with. Well, perhaps. But, in our road towards illumination, if people have the road to personal happiness, a lot of us have that road to personal illumination, full liberation in this body, so that nothing governs us, that we become these pure, free spirits that we are. In that way, sometimes that message of self-love that someone shares with you, someone, let's say, who's more prone to personal happiness or fulfillment, is also a message for you, because it is a part of your own inner light quotient building, that momentum you're building from within, so that you can be acting as this greater vessel for spirit. So it's not separate. It's just that, let's say, people who only know one side of the coin, they can't expand into that, which is this vast cosmic universal love. And if you're only focused on the great picture without doing the inner work, then you also become disentangled, disembodied from what's actually wanting to rise through you, through your own sacred body, that is eventually a vessel for illumination. The next thing I want to talk about is this example I've recently seen. I want to share with you this light activation, or a light exercise you can do, but again, it comes from a state of a light being. If you want to understand more what a light being means, it's not the same as a light body. You can find that as a mini audiobook. As you know, I have an Elohim series of these, I think now it's 7 sacred channeled Holy Spirit books of life, of higher wisdom from the principles of creation. And the recent one is called Light Beings and Creation Pillars. And you can then see what light beings truly are. So when you rise up to the level of a light being, when you have raised enough light quotient within you, you can start to work with your light being at a higher level. So let's say we are in relationships, or we are serving others, and somehow they come across us, or we come across them, we come across each other. Things may happen, and conversations may happen, and something transpires, something unfolds, and it's not always pleasant. Sometimes people still move into separation. Sometimes people will still have to pick up their fragments, pick up the pieces, and build a bigger reality of that wholeness. And during that process, a lot of times we may encounter situations when we feel kind of at the verge of that feeling a little bit of torn, whether we should still continue to respond or correspond with them, or even say something or write something to them or not, and how we express ourselves at that level. So recently, as a part of that expansion, which I always go through, and just these last 2 weeks, I was preparing my sacred space again for a new level. This is what I do as a pillar of creation, and every time things just withdraw from my life completely, and I know this process by now. I didn't always understand it, now I do. Everything withdraws itself so that I can create this holier, more sacred space for this light of the liberated goddess, or the feminine principle of life, or the Holy Spirit, as I call it, that essence of life itself, can move even deeper through my presence to reach the level of expansion that I'm meant to, that I signed up for, that is in my own mission work. So when that happens, it's sometimes, like I said, it can be challenging, but it's also so beautiful, it's so liberating. And when I went through those waves, tears were moving and I was releasing things, but at the same time I felt so much lighter, because I was literally seeing how I'm making space so that this new level of the flame can rise up in my body. And each time you rise in that light quotient, there's a new vista presented. It's like a whole new landscape, right? So as I was moving through this, I was actually being initiated into a new level of being and how I can assist. And I did this light exercise in one example during a recent experience I had with someone who actually contracted themselves. They really didn't act out of love completely. They weren't fully transparent and genuine. And instead of, going into the, oh, I'm the offended human, no, it's not about that. I wanted to work at this new level. So I asked, how can I now advance and progress so that I can do more from this higher state of a light being? And then I saw this vision, how, as you know, the light being, when you gather this light potion, when you do any kind of breath work, when you do life force work, which is what I teach in my courses and my Tantrika Life Force Mastery course and the Cosmic Union Ascension, you work with this conscious direction of life force. So you're actually pulling the light quotient through your body yourself, because you're actually really seeing how easy that can be once you start working from that level. So I was seeing this golden light in this head area, and suddenly through my breath with this life force mastery, I actually cultivated enough light that I was able to fully gather or summarize this aspect, this illumined, like a ball of light. Let's just say that's what it is, although it's not like that exactly. And what I did is I liberated that aspect through my being, which meant I pushed it through my crown and I let it exit my body. Not that it's, not in the way it exits, I'm not that. It's very hard to explain this. So I consciously directed it, I'm going to say like this. And as I directed it, I asked it to move through the unified perspective or unity consciousness with life force mastery towards that being that went into that contraction, and just let the light being show me this process, how it can do much more than if I go into my human nature and thinking what I need to do, respond, how to act. As humans, we have so many concepts, and that's not really helping us to move into this higher octave of our functionality, of our, operability here on Earth. And then we always act the same way. So how can we expect things to change, right? And I remember I always had this pattern before, how I needed to always bring this higher wisdom to someone who has moved into contraction, and I did a lot with my words, and I realized it didn't always fall, well, probably in most cases, it didn't fall to very fertile ground, because literally Spirit showed me, it said, look, if the person is not yet at the level when they have this own self-realization about this, then whatever you say or explain or share even the highest wisdom with them, they're not yet ready to receive. So as humans, we need to learn that. We don't always have to have the last word, even if it's like the most illuminating word you can write or share with someone. It's not always what is necessary of you, and we use a lot of energy from a human functioning level to produce, to share, to give, and giving is not equal to sharing. Sharing is a state of divine neutrality, of divine equality, where you observe through witnessing the presence of life force. I gave you the spiral teaching in the previous video, and it's basically understanding when the infinity flow works, and then when you move back into the spiral, which is the pulse of life, the origin of life creation principle. When you move into the spiral and just emanate from that essence on, when you're guided to share, then you again go into the infinity. But the giving part of life, when you're always in the giving state, and the receiving, it's always based on polarity that's not yet fully integrated. In a fully integrated neutrality, that illumined polarity expression, there's just sharing, and you will see sharing is like this infinity symbol. Giving is more like there's still a bit of separation. You need to give because you perceive yourself as a giver, or you were told in this life you were a giver, or somehow situations and conditions brought you, or you're meant to illuminate that pattern that most of humans have. So when you see that when the sharing is possible, and again, when there's a contraction, you can't always do it, and I've shared this in the Ascension update for May, this higher spirit of life, or this spiral teaching from the pulse of life. And when you practice this, you will see sometimes there will be an enthusiasm within you. Oh, I need to do or say this, or wait for that wave of enthusiasm to move through your body, and then go back to the spiral and you see how you're guided to act from the spiral, because that's truly the state of illumined presence within you. When you're guided to act, you know, when it's like this, when you're in this expansion phase, first you're expanding from and for with yourself, within yourself, for yourself. And a lot of times we want to act from this state already when we're still expanding. So we have to do our own inner work. I'm explaining this for illumined beings, how we function, how to really raise our potentiality of, you know, having these divine relating experiences that are coming from unity consciousness, because we're creating them like this. So in my experience, I just observed what the light being will create, and I've literally seen this like angelic presence with wings. It was flying to the area, and I saw that being, it was almost like the being was sitting sorry, as a fly, sitting in the meadow, right? They were sitting and looking away, like very much gazing somewhere. And that being, I saw it like, I was looking now at my light being from the perspective of that being who was, you know, the recipient, or how to say it. So I was observing, and it was like this huge, tall, very tall light being that, you know, I consciously directed out, and I was just observing. I didn't control the experience. I was just witnessing it. And what I saw was simply, you know, as usually masters say, they don't use a lot of words and complex whatever teaching. They simply share that truth in a very organic, very simplistic way. And it was simply words, something like, you have not, your actions or your integrity or alignment was not fully within love. When you're ready to witness that, you're going to come out of yourself, you're going to pay attention, you're going to be present, you're going to see that when you're ready, only when you're ready. But it's like that being sent a message with a unified perspective. It didn't need to give a bunch of details that usually the human self would, you know, and you did that and that happened, you're this and you're that, you know, like how humans get, okay? I'm not saying that's wrong, it's just not yet illumined, it's just not the highest potential. We're all capable of embodying and just creating, you know. And so at that level, the being wasn't really paying attention, and the being said, first it called its name out, and then it called the being, and it said, look, just, you know, pay attention when we're speaking. That's always a we. The illumined present is always a we. It's the I am, it's the we. The funny thing is the I am is not an I. You know, we always say in the name of I am, like the I am is the I, the individualized I, but it's more of a we. That's the divine paradox. And then what I witnessed then was when they shared with the being how when they're ready, only when they're ready, they're going to see their own not yet full alignment with that which is true love, that divine love, the love that is the love of wholeness of all, seeing how your actions do impact others, and how when you don't consider that, you're not going to be in wholeness, you're not going to act from this higher place, state of love. And then I suddenly saw like a transparent dome of light over that being, and the being was just sitting, so they didn't see everything. It felt like, you know, when you're sitting down like this, it's a beautiful experience, but life seems like static. Life is happening around you. You're just witnessing it. Then when you start to create, you get up and you start walking, and then you're suddenly noticing things. And that's what they were showing. They were showing that once you get up, you can see what's actually really there. So if the being gets up, they will see, whoa, this dome of light is kind of like a barrier. And that's what they were showing them. That even though they might feel they're already in that union, it's not all as it appears to be when you're just sitting down, because you're not moving, you're not expanding, you're not ready to see something or witness something, and you're not ready to expand. And then it was this feeling like when the being is ready, they will realize like this is, even though it's transparent, you can see the reality around it, you can't move from it. And they shared only when your love is true and fully from a state of divine union, these borderlines or falls, you know, like a transparent something, but it's a limitation. You can't move through it. And it exists because you're in separation. So that's how it was shown. And the funny thing is that's why a lot of people won't witness it, because it looks like it's transparent. It can be very hidden. And yet it's because we still need to experience world, not like something is imposed upon you, like now you're not deserving of seeing the whole world, you know. It's not that. It doesn't exist. It's just that when you reach a certain level, you will see that's much more beyond it. But your love has to be true. It has to be devoted. So that's what I saw. And when the experience was over, the being flew, or you know, consciousness returned. And it was this higher wisdom of this expansion. The next example I can share with you is just a day before. We had like this spontaneous, I don't know how I can call it, a healing session, if it's even that. It was just, let's call it a spontaneous alignment with this higher teaching, wisdom, presence of illumined truth. Okay. So as you know, my mother last year, she fell on her hand, and the thing with her, as Spirit showed me, as I've witnessed it, is that she used to have like this high knowledge, understanding, and I always tell her, you used to be a wise woman. But then I saw she experienced many lives of frustration because she was, you know, there was a lot of pain inflicted upon her, let's just say like this. You know, there's also torture and things like that. Many souls experience that. So that pain was, in a way, the killer of that wise woman, because that's what they did in the past. They used pain and torture to infuse the kind of cellular memory that you would never be able to call that higher aspect within you out, and you couldn't fully live it. You couldn't fully exist in that state. That's what they did. Torture is not just you know, because beings are so vengeful and they want to hurt other people because, you know, they're just living in fear, so they have to induce fear. Torture has so many reasons that we don't yet understand. You know, the humans don't yet understand. But I'm shown in many cases we used to program the cells with this fear. So you couldn't live, you couldn't, in any other lives you would incarnate, you couldn't call that part of you back until you were really ready to face those aspects and really call them out. And that's why Spirit said through me that because that was her road to, to lose that aspect, not lost, it's always within, but it couldn't be experienced anymore. That's why the road of pain needed to be activated again. So let's say the road of pain was the road back to the wise woman. So let's say pain was initiation, or it was an initiator. That is when only you embrace it fully without fear, it's your road back to that which is your most unified inner essence. Okay, so I said, well, experiencing physical pain, which she did in this life, was kind of like your road to that illumination again, eventually. So she created a lot of pains or injuries. All of her life was always repetitive, and I've told her many times, you have to move through this, you have to accept pain. And every time she got more physical pain, she always said, oh, but this hurts again, and this, and why, and she always went to the mind. So yesterday I put my hands on her, that arm, right, was the whole arm, was a part of that healing experience. And I just held them there, and I instantly received this information that, as you know, I've talked about this before, when you have an injury and when you're in the contracted state of fear, when you fear pain itself, you will create kind of like a dislocation of that energetic part versus the whole of your body. So it will kind of like lodge itself, it will kind of like hide itself or cover itself with a kind of like a membrane. It's not just a physical membrane, but you know, when you have injuries, when they say, well, this part has separated itself with this physical membrane. Well, we do that because we create an energetic barrier, membrane around it. You know, we did that with the dome of light, which was actually a membrane with limitations. So it's kind of like very similar, except on a tiny micro level it happens. And the thing was, what I saw was now it was a little better, and now all of a sudden started to hurt again. And I get this message: the deep tissue is now healing. And when the deep tissue, as you know, there's a record memory, and the memories of pain it's like they hide themselves there. And once you get to that level, when you break through, it's like you get closer and closer to that aspect, you'll find like, wow, what's there? Ouch. You know, that's why sometimes people really don't want to look into their shadow. They kind of like put it under the rug, or, you know, they rather avoid it for a while. But it's kind of like something you keep piling up, and eventually when you're ready to see it again, it's like, whoa, now it has piled up. Now it's gathered. What is this? And the pain is just the calling forth of the body. The body calls for a new initiation. The body calls for you to embrace a new aspect. And when we did that, she's just doing this, as you know, the is it called EMFT? What is it called? You know, when you tap yourself. I don't know the shortening for it in English, but this tapping experience when you're producing this mantra, well, it's basically a divine word, and then you send it as signals of light through your whole body through these meridians that were channeled. They're very important meridians, okay? So I was still touching her hands, and I was feeling into the energy, how it changed. And I said, look, I'm not your healer. I'm not giving you Reiki. I'm just tuning into what's happening so that I can assist you with your own healing process. So when I received this guidance, I asked her, I said, we're going to start, you're doing the tapping now, that's good. It serves you to just feel, but don't just do it randomly, because people say automatically, da 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 da, you know, they're pounding themselves on the head and saying things. You have to feel the reaction. You have to feel the responsiveness of your body. You have to feel the energy of your body afterwards. You have to not just say the words, but you have to become the living embodiment of those words you're saying, okay? So we had 3, of course, in our own language. They have to add up to 7, I think, which is most powerful then, you know, 7, spirit number. Wow, it's a little thunder now. But anyway, I think we're so cool. So we did 3, and the first one was that she fully accepts pain. When she did that, I felt like a flow of energy moving through her arm. I said, look, something's happening, okay? The second one we did, she then was, she was free from pain because she accepted it. She said, okay, I'm just accepting the pain. Because when you're afraid of it, you're not accepting it, you're not seeing its message, you're not dealing with the written aspects in your cellular memory and the record memory. So let's say deep tissue holds a lot of that in our body, and sometimes in the bones and the bone marrow. So that's why people have bone cancer even, you know, eventually, things like that. It's very dense things that don't want to come to light. And when we did the second, which was I am now free from pain, all of a sudden this flow went through the hands, and all my hands started to twitch. I said, look, now you're really releasing the flow. And I could literally feel how when someone taps themselves and sends these signals through the body, because remember, illumination is when you're doing it in the body. It's not just like somewhere up there. So we were going through this process, and then in the third part, I said the third stage is now you have to embrace your own inner healing. So the third mantra or decree was that she is her own healer. And I said, now you give yourself love. You don't need Reiki or this or someone else. Now you will give yourself love, because in many times, you know, they say your hands are healing, put them here or there. Yes, that's all nice. But if, let's say, you have an aspect or a memory within you that will block a part of that love you're wanting to send through, it won't be optimally received. That's what I'm saying. So then she puts her hand, and again, wow, I said, this is the strongest current of energy now. When she put her own hand, then she was sending herself love and sending herself this compassionate healing to that part of the body, just infusing it with light. And all of a sudden it just went through, because she first accepted pain, liberated, was free from pain, and then she became her own healer. So I said, work with this for a while now. I gave her these homeworks. That's how we are. I give her little homeworks, but they always work. She's transformed so much in her life. Of course, she had me. It was a little easier, but this whole process, she, for me, is a mirror, so I can see how these things actually work physically through a human being. And she's not my test bunny or anything, but in a higher sense, it's really beautiful, this co-creation. So this is what I wanted to share with you, how important it is to move through all these aspects, to first embrace something, to see how that full acceptance of that, whatever it is, whether it's a pattern, whether it's something we don't want to see about ourselves, and then how that embracing of it will create this liberation. And that's what this liberated masculine and feminine, when both of polarities within us are truly liberated, all these aspects and perspectives, then only then is it possible for us to eventually become an illumined flame, and then to merge with the other flame that's also, let's say, fully illumined, another being, so that we can have two beings who can come together as these power souls, these powerhouses of immense magnetic and electric charge that can bring so much beautiful, I'm not even going to say healing, but creative light potential to this world and beyond. The last thing I want to share, let's see if I have anything written here. Yeah, the last thing I want to share is what I'm noticing now in our human collective is a part of these almost like collective limiting, inhibiting factors that prevent us to move to the next stage. And what I witness is a lot of people now, even if they're healers, authors, sometimes even especially, a lot of them have become so attached to the persona they are, all the social media pages they need to have, all that they need to produce. When I remember myself going through this stage, I was like, whoa, no, I'm not going to be a mass producer of content. No, this is not going to be an identity for me. This is what I am, this is my being, but it's not going to become a status, or I'm not going to be now obliged to be a certain way or to fulfill people's needs for, I don't know, something. And it felt fake, and it's not really who we truly are. We are here to work through higher levels of light. And I'm noticing sometimes that we are sharing all these aspects on Facebook, or, Facebook is for me the worst. That's why I post the minimum there. I love Instagram because there's beautiful, cool creators there. I'm not judging Facebooker at all, but I'm witnessing a lot of these things, and sometimes people will share the most mundane things about their life. I'm not talking about sharing things of inspiration, of vision, of art, creativity. But when people get too much into these mundane things, like what flavor of ice cream they had today, or, they're scribing every detail of their experience. It's like, you're not being with it. You're talking about it, and you're needing to share with everything and everyone. But the question that recently Spirit posed to me was, who were you before Facebook was invented? A lot of us get identified. When I had my own Facebook page experience, I need to shut it down for a while at least. I don't know the next step. I only know my now. But I felt the liberation when I did that, because I had too much. I had too many venues of sharing, and it limited the light flow, which basically illumined beings need to be fully free spirits. You can't have a certain obligation. You can't have a sense of time, or someone telling you, well, this will happen for you, even foretelling or prophecy. I had people, I didn't even ask for guidance, trying to give me guidance or what will happen physically in my life. First of all, it never happened, and I knew it won't because it was not in resonance. Second of all, people don't learn that everything they're expressing, it's an expression of them. And as a mirror, you're perhaps unveiling that aspect for them. But people are so fast to see, well, this is about you, or this is for you. No, it's not that simple. Well, it is that simple when you know how to bring it back to yourself. But in many cases, we start so much now in this day and age to identify ourselves with these roles we now have, to be so public and exposed and the best, and share so much and communicate with everyone and be so many things that the Spirit said, but who were you before Facebook? Who were you before that? How did your life force work? Did it reach who it needed to reach? We sometimes think if I don't do this, or I don't get this done that I need to, and remember, need to is the strongest inhibitor, okay? So when we know that life or spirit, without a propaganda and constant like throbbing at something, online and all these venues, it's so natural. When you start to work with life force mastery, everything unfolds naturally. You don't need all this advertising, all this constant sharing. One thing is to share within community, within that sense of unity, higher visions, ideals, co-creative. The other is to lose time, to waste time, to simply hang there. It's such a limitation to the nature of what our spirit is capable of experiencing through our human vessels, but we are inhibiting and letting it stay only at the certain levels, because it's almost like we think, well, that's who we are. And it's a lot of times it's a strong identity we build. In many cases, I see people will always stay at the same level of what they're able to share or create, because that's what they start to identify themselves with. For me, I don't want to be any of the things I'm doing. I know what I am in terms of essence, but what I'm doing in the moment has to be in the moment, and I don't want to attach myself to it. Like, now this is what I'm doing now. I'm doing these readings, or I'm doing that. It's not really my source. It's an expression in the moment, and when you're really remembering what a true state of illumination is, it's going to feel so free. And at a certain point, you will be asked to liberate yourself from every opinion you've ever had of yourself, every opinion someone else has given you, even if it was, let's say, very positive. If they had, someone was always telling me about my beloved union, right? Something like this and like that. And I'm like, I felt they're actually expressing what they feel the beloved is for them. It was different than the vision I have and what I feel in my own heart, in my own illumined being. And even if it's positive, it's not always you. Because when people are still not whole from within themselves, they will always project one aspect that they're not yet fully embodying into something or someone else. That's what humans do. Because eventually that energy has to go somewhere, right? We can't contain so much, so we deposit it somewhere. Until we're really that sacred flame, that illumined flame, and there's so many ants now climbing on my camera device. I hope I'm not like one big ant moving through all the time. Sorry, guys. But either way, 144 is on the clock. Wow, you can make these things up. I see it all the time now, and that's it's a number code of illumination. And I recently again went through this beautiful experience. I was waking up every morning at 6:40 until like about a week or so later. I was like, oh, that's actually 64. Oh, that's a creation pillar number. That's the number of all these, like the flower of life, you know, all these divine signets of life or seals of life in creation. And we have all 64, that's creation pillar consciousness. I was like, every day, because I had still, a part of me had those doubts. And what I witnessed then as a part of my liberating process was I had these voices telling me things about me that were not real. And then I said, are these even my own voices? And the answer was no. I felt, ooh, there's always like these, you know, when they have these whispers, you know, like they tell you, oh, you're bad, you're this, you're not this being, you're not this illumined being, oh, you know, it's not always going to be a voice of when say, oh, that's the voice of your ego. No, a lot of times these beings or entities exist, and it's going to be their assignment to make life more fun for you in a not so positive way. What this means is that until there is an aspect, the tiniest aspect of that within you, and I said doubt, by the way, I didn't say it so loud, but if there's even one tiny aspect of it, that energy can still have a chance to kind of start penetrating through and influence you. But when you see it for what it is, when you unmask it, you say, oh, that's not my own voice. Who's telling me these things that are like nasty about myself? That's not me. Why are you doing this? That's not of love. That's not how spirit speaks. Like, oh, you're not this. You're just like this tiny person. You don't matter. You're not important. And then you see, oh, and then you witness them. The moment you bring that illumination through that doubt, through unworthiness, whatever it is, you move it through instant, poof. You know, like Buddha under the tree. He witnessed that, which was what it was, and gone in an instant. When he realized, when that self-realization is complete. So, yeah, that was, sorry, my message for today. What true liberation of that illumined flame is, how we can attain it. Just follow your own process. There is no other advice or teaching I can give here. But I hope my words and experiences and activations have helped to serve your own process. As always, with so much love, wisdom and power, which is our own threefolded flame, which burns brightly within everyone. But then again, it's up to us how we raise that sacred flame to this potential, which is unlimited. It's no longer like, as a human, I have this potentiality or this capability. It becomes unlimited. That's how Holy Spirit is. The essence of life, which knows nothing, no boundaries, nothing like that. Only infinite expansion. And love, which love is never too much. So when you start to doubt yourself, let's say you have a more negative relationship experience and you said, oh, I did this again. Oh, I didn't listen to myself. I did this, I did that. Well, maybe you had to. Maybe it was a part of that initiation. So don't doubt yourself. Or maybe you overly gave. Well, it taught you something, right? About the nature of giving and how now you can turn it into an illumined sharing that is this unified, that's this transparent flow, illumined flow. So I wish you so much beauty as always, this divine harmony, divine perfection of life that you're witnessing through yourself. The more you open up, the more you rise that flame. And you can always find my mastery courses on my page, as well as my personal services. Whatever I'm doing, it's on my page, Serapina Light. And don't forget to subscribe to the blog so you can get it in your inbox. And if you want, as I've shared before, every donation, support of my work, you know, like in this real time or in Patreon, will always be a recipient of an illumined oracle, which is the Oracle of Illumination. It's how I call it. So thank you so much. Many blessings as always. I'll see you soon.